Senators Richard Burr and Kelly Loeffler have recently been in some hot water for allegedly profiting off of some knowledge about the severity of the crisis. That, of course, is a little bit up in the air. But now the Intercept's D.C. bureau chief, Ryan Grim, he's uncovered a possible $6 million deal that Senator David Perdue may have gotten after his election to the Senate.
Now, Senator Perdue serves on the Banking Committee and has used his position to roll back regulations on companies like the one that gave him that $6 million deal. Ryan Grim joins us now via Skype to explain this story and what he's uncovered. Ryan, always great to see you.
Yeah, good to see you guys.
All right, so what did you find here?
So Perdue, for those who don't know him, is the former CEO of Dollar General. And when you're the CEO of a company like that, one of the perks that you get is you start serving on other corporate boards, and then other corporate boards use the fact that you've served on other corporate boards to put you on theirs, and you get extremely well compensated to be on those. So Perdue served on 3 corporate boards that he left after he was elected to the Senate. So he was elected in November, stepped down from there, from those boards in 2014. Collectively, he earned about $10 million sitting on those boards, and we use the term earned loosely here. The company that I zeroed in on is called Cardlytics. It's an Atlanta-based fintech firm, which has a complicated business model, but essentially what they do is they use access to your consumer banking data to figure out what types of things you purchase, and then they sell that data to advertisers and companies like Amazon, who then can personalize their marketing to you. And so Perdue served on that board from 2010 to 2014 and was given 300,000 stock options for that service. The problem is, because he left the board in 2014 and the firm was still private, those stock options would have been worthless. So what the company did, is they extended his contract, his ability to exercise those options, all the way out to 2020 and 2022. So that gave him a huge window for the company to go public. Sure enough, the company went public in 2018. Perdue exercised his stock options. The stock soared. By this year, his options that cost him $300,000 to buy were worth roughly $7 million. So ahead of the pandemic, he sold about $1 million plus worth of the shares. The stock tanked. He then bought back a bunch of his shares at a steep discount, and he still holds a significant amount of shares in this company, even while he serves, like you said, on the Banking Committee and also on a banking subcommittee that even more directly oversees companies like Cardlytics. Now, he recently, under pressure, unloaded a ton of his individual stocks because he's been roped into this stock trading scandal the same way that Kelly Loeffler and Richard Burr have. And so under pressure, he unloaded them and he moved his money into ETFs and other broad-based kind of non-controversial investments. But he said he was keeping the shares in Cardlytics and the other 2 companies where he served on the board.
Ryan, I think this is something that needs to be highlighted. None of this is illegal, but it's also just unseemly. And parts of the stock trading scandal you talk about, one of the things that was highlighted is not just Richard Burr. It's Richard Burr, Kelly Loeffler, Dianne Feinstein, Nancy. So many of these members of Congress, very powerful members of Congress, have extraordinarily high net worths and financial stakes in the industries that they are supposed to oversee. And, if it wasn't, the Stocks Act, as I understand it, was not even passed until all that recently. So before,
right.
What was it, the mid-2010s, this was all just happening behind the scenes, and we didn't even know about it.
Yeah, until the Stock Act was passed, it was entirely legal to use private information that you gleaned through your congressional duties to profit in the stock market. And in fact, economists have done studies of members of Congress's financial returns over decades and found that members of Congress outperform the public by something like 10 to 15% on average, which absolutely can't be chance, and it certainly can't be just genius or intellect. You all have interacted with a lot of members of Congress. These are not the swiftest boats in the fleet.
This is
yet
true.
How are they winning this race anyway? And so the Stock Act said, okay, well, you can still own stocks, you can still day trade, but you can't use private information that you picked up in a briefing that you only got because you're a member of Congress. So that's the very narrow legal implications here, and that doesn't seem to apply here. But I have talked to Republican operatives who are very concerned about losing the United States Senate. Perdue is up, as is Loeffler, in November. And GOP operatives, just shaking their heads, like, why don't you multimillionaires just put your money in a blind trust? Do you really have to be day trading as a senator? Perdue is, I'm sure, quite glad to have this $7 million windfall from this company, but he's an extremely rich guy from his time at Dollar General and his other tenure. If he never got those stock options from that company, it wouldn't change his lifestyle at all. There are no bills that he's not able to make, or that he is able to make because he got this. So why not just put everything in ETFs or in a blind trust like some others do? Mark Warner, for instance, an extremely rich senator, has all his money in a blind trust, and so he avoids these types of stories because reporters start looking into it. You made X amount of money according to your disclosures on this, and you knew why. He can show them a legal document that says there is a legal blind trust set up. There is a wall between me, Mark Warner, and my money. So therefore, I had nothing to do that. And so Republican strategists are very frustrated that Loeffler and Perdue didn't do that, and now Perdue is belatedly and not completely, finally moving in that direction. But now we're 6 months away from the election.
Well, and that's the issue, is it's not just the reality of, did you have non-public information? Does your financial position in this company impact the laws that you are involved in passing? It's also the appearance of those things that really undermines trust in these lawmakers, undermines trust in the institution. But specifically with Perdue, do Democrats have a real shot at this seat?
They do. I think Georgia, if it counts all the votes, is a pretty 50-50 state at this point. And because there are two races on the ballot, that gives them an extra shot to win that. Loeffler is extremely unpopular. And then, if she loses the primary, Doug Collins, is going to struggle as well in the general election. They're both favorites, but they're going to struggle. In this one, you've got Teresa Tomlinson, who's the Columbus mayor, who's running, but her race hasn't really caught on. Her campaign hasn't really caught on. You've got John Ossoff, who, you remember, the Resistance star from 2017, who raised something like $22 million and lost to Karen Handel by a point or two in that major special election in 2017. He's running again, and he's probably the favorite to win the Democratic nominee. But there's also an extraordinarily rich woman who's running in the primary who may spend her way either into the runoff. That's unclear, I think. So they do have a shot, and this newest story feeds into the problems that they've been having. And even if you sift through all of the stock trading and decide that, okay, none of this broke any laws whatsoever, it still exposes the massive wealth gap between these two elected senators and the people that they represent, which is damaging the worse that the economy continues to get.
Right, certainly is. Well, Ryan, appreciate you updating us on this story. Thank you for tracking us.
Yep, you got it.
Mm-hmm. Next on Rising, Joe Biden's favorability started to trend downward since Tara Reade's interview with Megyn Kelly. Our thoughts on that with Rising continues.